Welcome to my channel and welcome to the video about July coloring results. July was quite hot month here in Ukraine, and as usual during hot weather I remember about my winter Christmas snow pictures. That's why I love to participate in Christmas in July color alongs. For this here color along I selected book by Crystal Vogel about elves. And here is a page with a lot of snow. You know, when I do snow pictures in December, I quite often got tired from all those blue shades which you usually use for the sky, for the snow, once again for all those snow pictures. But when you do one picture in July, it's always very refreshing, so I enjoyed calculating doing those shadows on the snow. I decided to color it quicker, so I used paint for the sky, for the shadows on the snow, watercolor paints. Then with white gouache I tried to mask all black lines, at least on the snow, so I think that snow looks quite realistic, fluffy, and I also sprinkled it in the end with white gouache to add effect of the fallen snow. Mostly I selected this one because I really loved animals. I enjoyed doing the squirrel and I enjoyed coloring those bunnies. I colored them in the same color palette, but I still tried to use slightly different pattern of lighter and darker gray areas on their bodies, so I think that they look interesting. And I'm happy that Gnome's family look happy. They definitely enjoyed this moment of ride, and I also enjoyed coloring this page. So easy, relaxing, and at least one added page to this lovely Christmas book. It's so detailed that I think that no one will be able to finish the whole book, but each of these pictures, they really give you a lot of pleasure. They are full of humor, and I love all those secondary characters which we can find on all the pictures. Next, Magic Mouse. You know how much I loved to color in this series of books. I quite easily finished summer and spring books, and I was happy to get this big adventure. When I purchased it, I didn't realize the difference in paper, because, well, on the first side, the difference isn't that big. Maybe it's slightly more transparent, but somehow I still have difficulties with blending and burnishing on this paper. The same Prismacolor and Artix pencils, which I usually used for previous books, somehow on this paper they don't want to cover a paper texture without this grainy look, without tiny visible white areas. I tried to use blender. Yes, I know that I can color it with markers, but I enjoy to use pencils, so I still try somehow to get used to this paper. But I can't say that all three pictures which I finished this month, that they gave me a lot of pleasure. I do love how they look, these gladiators in Rome, and couple of tropical pictures where Mouse was collecting shells, or where they were swimming together. But when I remember how difficult it was to get the smooth look from the pencil to cover paper texture, and somehow I need to spend maybe 2 times longer for all these pictures to get decent look from pencils, comparing to the time which I needed in spring and summer book. So I'm still confused. Paper doesn't feel very difficult, so something is broken and I don't know what to do. Okay. Next, Teresa Goodrich, which I try to color each month, and this month wasn't an exception. Maybe let's start from Country Kitchen Charm. It was a spontaneous choice, because picture maybe it has some spring vibe because of the tulips, but of course mostly I was attracted to the yummy things on the table. In this book I already tried many color combos for the wood table or those cupboards, for the furniture, and also for the bricks, because I already finished a lot of pictures here, and each time I try to experiment a little bit of colors. So for this one I selected all those peach, orange, brown, beige, orange colors. I think that in the end everything worked quite well. I do love that I have several like more muted areas, like this background made from bricks, then several vibrant objects, those tiles or bottles, and of course the focal point is this lovely composition on the table, the wine, grapes, and other yummy things like cheese or olives. So I think that it's not bad. Funny is that the least successful element here is those flowers. I don't know why, but my Posca, it like bleeded over those black lines. Unfortunately, this book, it has very thick black lines, maybe even more thick comparing to other Teresa books. I don't know why, because in this book we have a lot of pictures with food, and I struggle each time when I need to mask those very thick black lines, which very unhelpful for food or for flowers. So here my masking totally failed. I know that white tulips, they don't look very nice. Well, I promised to reduce them, maybe to turn all of them into yellow flowers, so maybe indeed I will do it, because, well, this one element ruined for me the effect from otherwise lovely page. I tried to look at this area, not at this one. But good point is that I added another finished picture here. Maybe one day I will manage to finish this book, because indeed I have a very good amount of finished pictures here. I also started this summer scenes, which I got not very long ago. This one I started because in July for Color with Ukraine we did pictures with beaches, with sea, and we dedicated it to beautiful Ukrainian city of Odessa. So my choice was quite easy. Here we have this lovely page with beach bar. I think that it has perfect summer vibe. I enjoyed doing wooden textures, those straw roof. I deliberately used very vibrant colors for the palm tree leaves. So everything is fresh, a lot of yellow colors to create impression of the sunshine everywhere. So I think that it looks lovely. So it was my first participation in Coloriage July theme, and the second it's in Mythographic Paradise. Not this one, the next. Where is the next? Here. I promised myself that I will start to use more of my acrylic and gouache paints, and Mythographic, especially first editions, they are perfect choice for opaque paints, because here my main task was to mask excessive amount of additional objects which totally ruined this perfect romantic picture of the beach, of the champagne probably. So those opaque paints really helped me to clean the beach. I struggled with blending on sky, so I had to add several additional clouds to mask the least successful areas. But apart from it, I think that it looks lovely. I think that my best works, they were made with mixed media, when I combine paints with pencils, because the background it's paints, birds, wooden texture, shells, and so that's pencils, and together I think that I can get the best result. And yes, for me it's really a good learning practice how to use paints properly. Apart from this one, I also used paints for this tropical fantasy village full of butterflies. I used 2 shades of gouache to get blue background and another shade to do those water fountains. So lovely fantasy village. Again, several objects I masked, and several I decided to keep, like those shorts. Maybe now I would use lesser amount of white. This white outline looks a little bit too rough, but I struggled how to divide blue background from water. Well, this page, it wasn't very dear for me, and in such way, when I'm not worrying about messing up this beautiful page, you feel more relaxed. You can practice some unusual color combos. So I think that for me it also was a good practice with gouache. The third, well, maybe it's my least favorite in my July works in this Paradise book. Again, because it was very crowded. I do love how I did the landscape. I deliberately wanted to do a connection between purple colors on the sky and purple fantasy colors on the leaves here. But in the end, when I had to color those dragonflies, I totally ran out of ideas which color I can use so the dragonflies still look realistic and won't be lost. I wasn't very successful, so I had to outline them with white. Now I don't like this outline. It looks very aligned to those wings. So I would say that this area is good, this not so bad. Also a lot of hidden objects which I tried to mask. I was lucky to have this sand color of acrylic gouache. I used it a lot to mask excessive line. So, well, 50-50. You know that I love Egyptian pictures, another addition to my collection, but between all those 3 works which I managed to do in July, I would say that it's number 3, that's number 2, and the beach page, it's definitely my favorite. Despite all the problems which I had with the sky, I think that it looks nice. I'm especially proud of my glasses. I really wanted to color in Clara Markova A Little Secrets from My Fairy House book, but unfortunately I didn't have enough time for this book. Maybe in August. So far I have 1 full picture which I did in this book during springtime when I just received it, and in July I managed to do tiny page. I think that here we have the chamomile tea. I enjoyed doing this one because I love to color glass. For me it's always interesting to calculate all those highlights, reflections, especially when inside we have some vibrant liquid and vibrant background and objects around which also need to be reflected in the glass surface. But this one I deliberately did with polychromasis. I love polychromasis, but on this paper I think that I prefer Prismacolors. Somehow I had to press harder with polychromasis. They didn't give color as willingly as they do on other papers. So it was okay, but I realized that with Prismacolors I can color quicker. My hand and arm wouldn't be so tired after this small picture. So for bigger projects I definitely intend to use Prismacolors. I also need to test another technique to use watercolor underpaint and then polychromasis on top, and it will help me to make final decision which pencils to use. In my green book of Fairy Celebrations I used both polychromasis and Prismacolors, but I feel that paper still very good but slightly different from those first books, so that's why I decided to make this quick test, and I was slightly surprised by the result. Okay, next let's talk about frogs. The first frog I did here in Wind in the Willows, the Coloring Haven magazine. I recently received a gift with several of these magazines, and the last time when I colored in those magazines, it was probably 5 years ago. So I needed to get acquainted with paper again to check which art supplies work on this paper, and I decided to try using watercolors, especially for this book where we have relatively empty areas, and I definitely don't want to do all this background with pencils. Yes, it's possible, but it's long, you need to spend a lot of pencils. Of course, watercolor would be better choice. And markers, yes, you can use them, but you know that I am a lover of pencils, so if I can't use watercolors, I will be using markers, but sometimes it's not my favorite medium. Okay, so I tested watercolor here. There were good results and bad results. Good results is that paper accepts watercolor quite well with moderate amount of water. You can apply multiple layers. To use glazing technique, when you apply one color, you need to intensify it. Later you can apply several other layers and you won't damage the paper surface. My problem, apart from my limited skills with watercolor, because I don't know which color to blend to get interesting greens, but well, that's my problem. Problem of paper was that after I applied watercolor, of course the page was, well, it was wavy, it was buckled. Usually I can resolve such problem by ironing it, and well, it always worked, but somehow here after ironing it started to look even worse. I have those sharp, crisp lines here, and well, it didn't improve the look of the page, it even made it worse. So maybe instead of ironing for the next pictures, I will simply put this magazine beneath the pile of heavy books. Maybe it will help me somehow. So it was quick work, relatively simple picture. It gave me some ideas, but well, maybe I will also try to use gouache or acrylic paint, but my skills with gouache and acrylics, they are even more limited comparing to coloring with watercolor, so I'm afraid to ruin the rest of the pictures. So now I need to rethink which media to use. And if we continue to talk about frogs, I just lost my bookmark, but I found. I did 2 pictures with Mr. Fogarty. In July, Mr. Fogarty traveled in Alps, in the mountains. I always loved this page. It was quite simple, so it was possible to color it in a very quick way. But I never knew what to do with this bottom part. It was like he was hanging in the air, several steps, without border, so I felt like there is no balance between upper and bottom part. In the end, I decided to make more steps, more stones around the frog, and I think that somehow it created kind of base for the picture on top. Nothing very special, but if I decided to color all pictures, of course I also needed to color this one. In this book I don't mind to use markers together with pencils. I'm glad that all pictures I do with the same media, so they look in the same style, even if I'm quite unhappy with all those stains which I usually have on the left side, and sometimes they ruin pretty nice tiny miniatures here. Especially I was very unhappy to ruin this Mr. Snail in Alpine Head. It's totally adorable, but well, at least markers help me to do quick backgrounds. And the second one, Mr. Fogarty visited Venice I always wanted for this page to have unusual sky color, so I think that here we have an evening, the dusk. I am always confused with dusk and dawn. So anyway, we have evening, so that's why to the sky I added touches of orange and pink to make it more interesting, all done with markers and of course with white paint to mask some of the lines and to soften edges between areas. Here I also decided to add bigger background. It's like 50-50. I didn't like this smaller arch without any background around, but I also think that I wasn't very careful when I did these markers. They went outside of the lines because of the thin paper. So there are areas which maybe now I would redo, but the central image I do love, especially the look of Mr. Fogarty. Maybe he's doing some sketches, he has inks, his sketchbook, but I'm really envy of Mr. Snail, who's having great time inside of gondola. Well, plus 2 more pictures, and you know that I promised myself that I need to finish this one and before I start the next book, traveling of Mr. Fogarty through the different countries and different time slots. We are moving to a romantic country. I hadn't touched this book for a long time, and thanks to the request of one of my subscribers, I decided to do a map. You know that all Aries books, they have lovely maps in the beginning of the book which represent all those fantasy cities, fantasy countries where she put all her characters. And here the map was okay, but some areas they felt empty. So apart from doing the main image with a couple of cities, villages, which later we can find inside of the book, I decided to add something from myself. I mostly added elements to the sea. I got inspiration from maps which we can find in children's book, you know, like Treasure Island or similar books. So I added the whale, the dolphin, pirate island, couple of volcanoes, those sunk ship, the mermaid, the octopus, well, with my, and the lighthouse. With my limited drawing skills, I think that it was a good work. In such a small size I can draw. So it was fun, really. I smiled a lot when I added those tiny elements. The background here I did with Arctic pencils. I simply didn't want to waste Prismacolors on such a big area. Arctics were okay, but they created waxy shining. After a couple of days you can clearly see this slightly whitish wax cover. I'm okay with it. So for me it didn't ruin the whole page. And now I have this lovely map. It really inspired me to look at my other books by Aries and maybe to do maps there. I would love to do one map in sepia style using only limited amount of colors to make it similar to the ancient maps. So I need to think about it. I really enjoyed doing this map. July also was the month of Nelko Neko. I managed to do a couple of pictures. The first one, let me show you this pair of Baker Tom and Grandma Daisy. Prismacolors are my favorite medium on this paper and I absolutely enjoy how they work on this paper. For me it's perfect choice. I love paper in this book. Also I love to use water-soluble media. I already used Inktense and Neocolors. They all work quite well. So I wish that all books would be printed in such quality. In this book I always struggle how to do different cats. I spent some time searching in internet for pretty faces of cats. So here I have cat with gray and white fur, and here it's a blend of more beige and brown together with gray. I think that they look nice. Sometimes it's easier to color when face is small, but when you need to do realistic fur with a lot of shades blend together, sometimes it could be even challenging comparing to the big portrait. So here I practiced how to color Baker Tom, and then I did full-size picture. I slightly cheated, and for the background, for the grass, for the soil here, I used Inktense. They helped me to do this basic layer, and on the leaves, on the trees, then I started to work with Prismacolor pencils. I think that here we have quite lovely page. I enjoyed doing both those baked goods, all those breads, and I enjoyed coloring cats, of course. Now I really want to start the right side. I love to have completed spreads, so maybe in August, if not in August, then in September I definitely will do this one also. It has a lot of interesting vegetables, fruits, everything which I love to color, so I think that it will be one of my next projects. And in my other book by Neko, where we have lovely girls, I decided to color Alice. Fun thing that first I colored Alice, and only later I remembered that here we have this inspirational picture, full color. But well, mine is quite similar. There is a small difference. The first page which I did in this book, I did with Prismacolors and even with Mitsubishi Uno. Prismacolors worked well. Mitsubishi Uno, well, so, but it's possible to use for the background. So on this one I decided to try polychromasis. Yes, it was okay, blending was good, only for the pastel shades like on her apron or on the roses I added a little bit of Prismacolors and even Castle Art pastel tints. So polychromasis I can recommend here. About watercolor which I used for the background, difficult question. I definitely intend to do more pictures using watercolor to have my final opinion. I deliberately did those stains. I don't know why. I didn't want to color them in plain gray or plain black. So I used a lot of water, and I had this slightly granulating Payne's Gray Kuretake paint. It by itself it's slightly chalky, so those stains I did myself. I somehow thought that it would be a good difference with very precise and accurate coloring with pencil. Now I don't know, do I like it or no? Apart from it, I think that page is very lovely. Well, those leaves, even it was a little bit boring to color two garlands because they were similar. At least I had several new ideas how I can add a little bit of red or a little bit of brown to make leaves more colorful, apart from using only green colors. And as usual, I struggle with light colors on the roses, so for me it's another thing where I can practice how to do shading on the very light creamy or light peach petals. I already have some ideas which pictures I can color next in this book, and yes, the next background again I want to do with watercolor. I will try different brands. I hope that in the end I will manage to do something decent in this book because it's very lovely. And final book, it's again by Eddie. Definitely July was a month for Eddie and for Neko. I finally started this book about young witch, Mary Abbott, who started her scholarship in the witch school, and her main hobby is drawing. of course, when I selected my first page, I wanted to color the first visit of Mary Abbott to the shop of magical art supplies and those magical art supplies. So here I have Mary Abbott as shopkeepers. We have two lovely fairies. They were very small, so around them I decided to add like magical halo of light. I think that it added interesting touch to the whole page. Well, in this book I decided that I will try the most unusual colors for the interiors, which I wouldn't probably use for more realistic interiors in Teresa Goodrich. Here I can do pink walls, I can do lavender walls, because we have several shops, so I intend to do some unusual interiors. It was quite fun to color all those jars with paints, all those brushes. Honestly, the right side I enjoyed a little bit more comparing to the left side, but together they really look lovely. I even added a little bit of shading around the page to make it look like old sketch. Every time when I colored all those jars, bottles with paints, I imagined magical properties of those paints. Here we have paint made from unicorn mane hair. This one is made from scales from the tails of mermaid. And I think that here we have some magical paints. This one is perfect for doing night sky. Just from one tube you can paint sky. Very helpful. I wouldn't mind to do this one. This one is for drawing magical fire and the cauldron. This one is good for maybe it's inks, and they are perfect for doing spells, for good harvest, or for calling dragons. Well, I had a lot of fun. You know, I colored it when I had, well, some difficult time. We had very difficult July here with a lot of bombing, without calm nights. So when I did this one, I really relaxed. It helped me to zoom, to distract from the reality, so I'm very grateful to this book. And I think that it definitely was one of my best works. Usually I struggle a little bit with airy style. It looks a little bit childish for me, and I always want to turn it into something more serious, but this spread, I think that it's definitely one of my best. And also I want to continue coloring in this one. Maybe I will skip it in August, but since September I will start to color in it more actively. You know that we usually do a lot of witch pictures during autumn time, especially for Halloween, and here I already know many pictures which I want to do about study of Mary Abbott, about wonderful places which she visited in the village. So definitely I can recommend this book for everyone, and it's pity that it's difficult to get this book. I'm very grateful that I received this gift. Well, that was all about my July. I hope that in August I also will manage to do something interesting. So thank you for watching, and until my next videos.